Welcome to the Everyday Miracles podcast, where real life stories of hope and inspiration are shared. Every day, miracles are happening all around us, yet we rarely hear anything about them. Why is that? I'm Julie Hedenborg, and I've committed my time and energy to bring these stories to you, including some of my own personal experiences. My hope is that you'll be impacted the same way that I was. Join me in my journey to inspire change in a world that so desperately needs it. I do want to issue a warning for children. There's a lot of mature content that we discuss in this testimony, and it's not appropriate for young children. So, hey, welcome back. This is Julie Hedenborg with Everyday Miracles podcast. And today I have Robert Decker out of Colorado here to share with us some amazing ways that God has moved in his life. And the big theme that I think is redemption. Whatever situation you're in, God can he's always hope for us. Robert has shared his testimony on the 700 Club, CBN, lots of different podcasts and places. So you may have heard of him, but he's got some beautiful things to share. So Robert, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Hello.
So my testimony always starts with my mom. And like I was sharing with you a little earlier before we started, my mom initially was told that she wasn't going to be able to have kids. And then when she got pregnant with me, she was encouraged to have an abortion, and my real father wasn't around. So when I refer to my dad is the man who raised me. 6 months after my birth, my mom met my dad, and soon after that my mom got pregnant again. And so my mom and dad got married. And my earliest memories of my childhood was probably kindergarten, when I came home from school one day and I had a diploma, and that diploma had my last name on it. So what I thought was my last name. And that day I found out that my dad wasn't my real dad, and that my sister wasn't my full-blooded sister. My grandmother told my parents that I wasn't their blood, that I wasn't one of them. And so I think that was the moment that I was black sheeped and put to the side and treated a little bit different, at least from my father. I know that throughout my relationship, my dad wanted to have another son, and my mom was so fearful of that situation because of how I was already kind of being pushed aside, and my mom didn't want that for me. And in my very young years, the things that I witnessed was the fighting, the arguing, the emotional abuse, the alcohol, the smoking. There were times where I walked in my parents' room and they were chopping stuff up on mirrors and stuff like that. And I was told it was one thing. And, as you grow older, you find out that it was something completely different. And, as I got older, the fights got worse. Police were constantly being called to my house. It got to the point when we were teenagers, my sister and I, that early on, her and I both started using drugs and drinking and hanging out with tough crowds. And my mom and dad kind of went their own way. My mom was, addicted to drugs. My dad was addicted to drugs. My dad moved out of the house to live with his girlfriend. My mom had just started seeing a man, and she was in a tough place too. And there were months in my home where we didn't have food because my mom would leave and my dad was somewhere else, and so we didn't have food. There was times where we didn't have electricity. My house was just kind of that house, and where all the neighborhood kids would come together and we'd all, party and drink. And eventually we got evicted from that house because there was so much trouble that was brought to that house. I was fighting a lot. I was in a pretty tough place. I mean, I grew up with so much violence that it became very normal to me. And even, I think I was 16 or 17, my dad came home one day and him and I got into a physical altercation. That was just normality for me. In high school, I probably got in 10, 15 fights, suspended a few times from school, locked up a couple times in juvenile hall. Um, I was just, I was a severely troubled kid, and early on in high school, I met a family, and they brought me in. But there was always that yearning to have your own mom and your own dad and your own sister, and to have a relationship with them. And as time went on, like, I would get involved in these relationships with young ladies, and the reality is, if it wasn't violent or destructive enough, then I would create that, or I'd get out of it and I would go find that. Um, Eventually, I mean, I'm bypassing a whole bunch, but um, you get an understanding of, like, my childhood, the drugs, the alcohol, the violence, and throughout my 20s, like, I would lose jobs because I would have it for a short period of time, but then the drugs, the alcohol, my relationships with people would start to disintegrate or get destructive, and then my outside life would have an impact on my work life, and then I'd end up losing my job. So I lost a few jobs, and eventually I got a job at a gym where I met a young man, and he was always preaching the Lord to me. And for me, it was just like, yo, dude, I get it, works for you, it just doesn't work for me. And uh and at that same time, I met a young lady. I was also selling drugs, um, selling human growth hormone and steroids, because I worked in a gym and I was kind of like the go-to guy. And so that easily came to me. That you know, being able to do that was very, very convenient. And I went to go cash a check one day, and I met this bank teller, and right away I just knew it was a really, like, trust me, I've been in some pretty chaotic situations, but there was something about her that I just knew was just not okay at all. And we started seeing each other, and very early on, all the junk came out. And you know getting to know her, she had some stuff too. She was a lot younger than me. um, I was under the impression that her dad may have molested her. She was watching pornography at a young age. Her parents had a business together, and he emptied out the bank account and took off with his secretary. So, there was all these other, she had her junk, I had my junk, and
Yeah.
now we're just a big heap of junk together. Um, and early on, our relationship got violent, and I knew that I needed to bail from that situation because it was going to get extremely ugly. And during that time apart, my buddy that I'd met at the gym, he invited me to a Bible study. And in that Bible study, I received the Lord. Very amazing experience. I remember us being in an air conditioned room. We were in California. It was very warm outside, and just getting the chills and the shakes and sweating in this cold room. And I knew something supernatural was happening at that point. And, that's when I started, delving into Christianity and church and fellowship. Well, what she was doing is she got turned on to escorting. And so at the time, on Craigslist in California, you could advertise yourself on Craigslist, and that's what she was doing. And so I found out about that, and um, it didn't settle well for me.
Oh,
And so,
I would say, yeah.
yeah, I mean, even though our relationship was bad, like, to see her doing that wasn't okay for me.
Hmm.
And now I had Jesus, right? And so it's like, well, I'm going to bring God to her, even though I was still struggling. I was still new to the faith. I still was drinking alcohol, doing drugs. Like, I was such a baby in the Lord. And so we get back together. Well, what happened in the agreement between her and I was that she was going to get rid of all of her clients. So she had one last client, and with that client, she went out to Hawaii. And while she was there, she was sending me text messages and calling me, telling me how he raped her, he beat her, and she wanted to come home and work things out with me. And she was extremely sorry for just a lot of things that took place in our relationship. And I can't blame her for everything that took place in our relationship, because I was my own mess. And so I was okay with that. And Memorial Day weekend, 2007, we were watching Lakers playoff game. We were watching the great Kobe Bryant. and she called me and picked me up. She left the airport, picked me up to go to her house. And on the way to her house, we went to the liquor store, picked up some alcohol, headed back to her house. And then we get into a conversation. And I really, it was supposed to become an intimate situation, but um, just with everything, the newfound faith, the previous troubles, the things that had happened to her in Hawaii, like it was just way too much. We drinking. And I chose to go downstairs and shake it off. And, she lived in a 3-story loft in Santa Clara out there where the 49ers play. And I go down and I wake up to a banging at the door. And she comes downstairs and I ask her what's going on. And it was the police at the door. And she said, I called the cops and said that you raped me and that you tried to kill me. And in that moment, I was just flooded with emotions. I was flooded with betrayal and hurt and confusion and fear. And I just, in that moment, I looked at her. I said, I just can't live like this anymore. And the truth is that even though I had just gotten saved, I was still homeless. I was still selling drugs. I was still doing drugs. I didn't have my license. I didn't have a job. Like I didn't have anything going for me outside of working out. That was pretty much the only thing I was doing. And in that moment, I said, I'm over this. I'm done. And so I ran headfirst out of a closed window with the intention of killing myself. I broke through that glass and my foot clipped an awning, changed my fall. I hit the concrete. I never blacked out. Felt pretty much, felt it. And I remember just laying in the ground, looking up at that window, asking God, as I'm gasping for air, I could barely breathe, and I'm asking the Lord, like, why would you let me live? And EMTs show up, take me to the hospital, and went under the knife for about 10 hours, woke up to a back brace, external fixator. They filled my lung back up, cast on another arm, medication tubes coming out of my neck, all the patches for the heart rate monitor on my, like, oxygen through my nose. Like, I mean, I was a mess. Had pain medication just being pumped through my neck. It was morphine and Dilaudid, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I was in immense amounts of pain, and the cops walk in the door, say, Mr. Decker, you're under arrest for rape and attempted murder, and your bail will be $1 million. And they shackled me to the bed and put a cop with me. So I was a flight risk. So before I jumped out of the window, I was in a lot of legal trouble that I ran from. And so in this moment, everything caught up to me. And as I'm laying in the bed over the next couple of days, there was a cop watching me, and he was doing something on his cell phone. It looked like he was fighting or arguing with someone on the other line, and he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be watching me. I could totally tell. And he had the case next to him, and he's reading it, and he's Mr. Decker, you're such a bad guy. I'm reading what's going on here, and you did some really foul things. And I started to break down. I was just like, I've done a lot of bad stuff in my life, but that's just not one of those things I would ever do, sir. And as I'm talking about it, I break down in tears, because I'm in disbelief. And nurse walks in and calms me down, and she's like, I can't have you crying right now, because I guess through the blood transfusions, all the blood that I lost, they just couldn't have my heart rate. So yeah. You're a nurse, you get it.
Yeah, it's not good.
No, they just my body rejected a lot of those blood transfusions too. I lost a lot of blood. But as the nurse is walking out, guess who walks in? The young lady in a disguise walks in with her sister. Yes. Your facial expressions say a lot right now.
They can't on your sides. That's why I'm like, oh.
So the exact same. I wish the world could see your facial expressions, but the police officer had very similar facial expressions.
Yeah, like, what are you doing here?
And his whole demeanor changed, and he's just like, well, this doesn't make sense. He's like, for someone accusing you of the things that you're being accused of, this doesn't make sense. And so he escorts her out, and I never see that young lady ever again. And later on, whether it was that evening or the next evening, I was really asking the Lord, well, what are we going to do? What's going to happen here? Because I can't walk. There's just a lot of stuff. I'm facing prison, and all of a sudden, that I I just get blanketed with this peace, the sounds of the hospital, the lights, and hospitals are bright. Um, just the chaos, nurses constantly coming in and out, the traffic. You're constantly hearing intercoms. I'm hearing my oxygen. You're hearing all the machines, but all that stuff just kind of simmers down for a moment, and the pain just kind of just eludes for a second, and I just hear this voice, and it says, "The charges will be dropped, your bills will be paid, and you will walk again." And I doze off into a vision or dream of playing soccer, which really came to make sense much later in life, because I'm not a soccer player, nor do I care for the sport by any means. It's okay now, but I didn't care for it at the time. And within the next couple of days following, one of the officers, really sweet dude, he was just like, "Hey man, I got to let you know that they're going to drop the charges. They're going to come in and they're going to release you." And he's like, "Man, I just thought you should know that, man." And really, really awesome, and so, these other police officers come in, detectives or whatever, and wish me luck, say, "Hey, Mr. Decker, we wish the best for you and we hope you get better." And so that came to pass. And at that time, because I was basically a prisoner of the state, I wasn't allowed to have guests. And my first guest was my mom, of all people. Now, my mom and I had some tribulations in this life. And my last conversation with my mom was a very unsavory, a son should never talk to his mother that kind of way kind of conversation. And my mom walks in, and, she had just got done talking to the neurosurgeon, because I saw him outside the room. My mom's bawling her eyes out, and I already know what's being said, and I know what's going on. And I'm asking her, "Mom, what are they saying?" And, it was discussed that I may never walk again. And, I told her not to worry about that stuff. And she comes up to the side of my bed in the most sincerest of ways, in the most motherly of ways, with the best of intentions. And she goes, "Son, I wish everything had ended for you that day." Yeah. And,
Oh,
and I didn't take one lick of offense to it, because knowing my mom and the limited information I had about her, and just seeing her marriage with my dad and everything that she had been through, she didn't want to hurt anymore, and she didn't want her baby boy to hurt anymore. And I received that wholeheartedly. I was just like, "I get it. I get it, Mom." And at that point, the nurses come in, they're like, "We're going to try to get you to walk." And I knew for a fact it wasn't going to happen. But, I just thought about Christ. Again, I just recently got saved, and Isaiah 53 was one of those books that stood out to me. And I just recently seen Passion of Christ as well. And so, I had to give my mom hope, and I was just like, well, Jesus did it for me, so I got to do it. And I knew that I couldn't, but I gave it a shot anyway. And I shot up, and it just felt like I hit the ground all over again. The amount of pain that just shot through my body. My incision was originally through my side, or my oblique. They didn't open me from the back. They opened me from the side.
mm-hmm.
And so it felt like everything was shooting out that scar tissue. And I just squealed so loud. And the nurse is like, "Yeah, it's not going to happen." And they sat me back down, and they pumped medication through that tube in my neck. And shortly after that, surgeon walks in, says, "We're going to perform another operation." And so they do. And after a couple days, I get up, or I have the nurses come in and say, "We're going to get you up." And I was able to actually sit at the edge of my bed, where before I couldn't even turn side to side. Like, I needed constant attention from nurses just to move pillows underneath my back, and, just to adjust me for 15 minutes. it's amazing how much medication you can have in your system, but still feel a lot of pain, which is where I was at. And they sit me up on my bed and I'm like, wow, like this is good. She stands me up and now I can put weight on the left side of my body. And like, I'm excited, right? This is so invigorating. And she walks me out. I don't know if walking is actually a great word. It was like half walk, half drag.
Yeah.
My right side was like fully functional. My left side was just lagging in life. And because the left side's the side that I fell on.
And you
And
told 3 stories. I don't think you said 3 stories is the.
it was a 3-story loft. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
a loft tends to be a little bit higher. I'm not trying to get kudos for the higher fall, but the reality is it wasn't a normal like 30-foot fall, because my impression is, a story's 10 feet, something like that. So
Yeah.
it was slightly higher, but yeah, she walks me out and right away I just take off like full on Usain Bolt. We're sprinting, right? Like I'm on my feet. And because my right side was normal, it could take off, and my left side was dragging. And so I did like this half circle where I ran right into the wall, bounced off the wall. And the nurse was just like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay?" And I'm over here laughing because I'm like, "Yes, I'm walking, I'm going." That was a long road ahead of me, but I was very encouraged in that moment because one, the charges were dropped, and now that I'm walking again. Reality is that the cops came back and tried to throw those charges back on me at one point. When I got released, what happened was, this story is great. They came to my mom's house where I was staying, wanted to throw the charges back on me. They wanted to admit two things. One detective wanted me to admit that I raped her, and I informed him because there was evidence of a rape. Well, I informed him exactly what her profession was. And his answer to that was this: "Oh, well, she didn't tell us that. She must have been pretty embarrassed to share that information." And I'm like, like, dude, this is my life, man. Like pretty embarrassed.
Yeah.
And then the second cop chimes in, "Well, you weren't trying to kill yourself. You were trying to run from us." I'm like, man, oh my goodness. I can laugh about it now. I can truly laugh about it now. But I'm like, man, these guys just don't know. Well, I went to court for some time and they still tried to throw those charges. And my attorney actually stopped showing up to court for me. He really thought I was finished. He thought I was done. But that wasn't the case. In the meantime, I had to get healthy again. And so my best friend, my best man, Benny, brought me into his house, and they basically let me stay there until I got good enough, healthy enough. I started working out again, started eating better. I was still struggling with alcohol, and I was still on some pain medications. But the more I worked out, I could get off the pain medication because my body could support this itself. And true, like in my process of physical healing, there was a form of spiritual healing that took place. And so, when I first got out and I had to live with my mom, well, God did a number on my heart with my mom. When I lived there, I got to meet my mom. I got to understand who she was as a person. And so I could no longer hold a grudge. I got to heal now. God gave me healing. My mom came home from work one day and I broke down crying when she walked through the door, and I said, God made you my mom, and I'm thankful for that. And I love you so much, Mom. And I just wept. And it was the beginning of healing for me. When I was in the hospital, though, the Lord did press on my heart that, you need to forgive this young lady that accused you of these things. And I said, done, done. But
Wow.
I think I wanted to heal because I realized I had purpose. Like I didn't understand why I survived, but I realized there was a purpose to me surviving. I didn't know what the outcome was going to look like, but I knew that I had purpose now, and that was huge. So in my purpose, I found hope. And then in healing, I found hope. And so I was able to forgive my mom. And then all of a sudden it's like, my mom started telling me about my dad and what he came out of. And I'm like, wow, well, now I have to forgive him. And, because the reality is that they got passed down some stuff and then they gave it to us kids. Well, it was my choice to now do something about it.
Mhm.
And I wanted to do something about it, and I wanted to give back. And so I had to forgive my mom and forgive my dad. And now I'm living in my buddy's house, and I'm healing physically, I'm healing spiritually. And eventually, I was pressed to I was living off of disability. I'm getting off all the medications. And I got a job at a gym. The Lord really pressed on my heart. Well, now you're going to go into the world and you're going to share the things that you've been through, and you're going to help people. And fitness is going to be an avenue for those things. Well, that was my heart going into this job. What happened is I met this young lady who was supposed to be assessing me as a personal trainer, who is now my wife with my two beautiful babies, Caleb and
Oh,
Gianna. Right?
that's
Shortly,
wonderful.
shortly. Well, God, He does some things. He knows how to make things work. Shortly after we both met each other, we actually both lost our jobs there. And I ended up getting a much better job where I was doing really well. And at this point, I was off pretty much all medication. I was only struggling with the alcohol. Well, my first date with Alyssa um, was, we went to a restaurant, BJ's, and I ordered a pitcher of beer. And she goes, "I didn't want any of that." And I was like, "Don't worry about it. That's all me. This is me, girl. Don't even trip. Like, I'm drinking all this."
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, "I don't like that." And one of my big struggles was alcohol, because I would medicate heavily with alcohol. Um, and I felt comfortable ish drinking. And I knew that she was going to be a powerful vessel of me quitting. Well, 9 months into our relationship, I got in her car, crashed her car, and ended up under someone's house. And in that moment, I was pleading with God. I said, "Lord, you've given me my life back. You've given me my body back. I went from being on disability to working at a place where, like, I'm the man. Like, I'm doing really well. I'm making great money. I've met this beautiful young woman, and here I'm all throwing it away for alcohol." Um, I was just done medicating. And I said, "If you bail me out of this situation, I will quit my job." We were living in Northern California. Alyssa just graduated San Jose State. And she wanted to move back home to Southern California. So I told the Lord, "Hey, if you bail me out, I'll leave my job, move to Southern California. I'll marry this young woman, and I'll never drink a drop of alcohol ever again." And he pretty much bailed me out of that situation. I mean, he bailed me out of that situation. And so moved to Southern California, got even a better job. The regional manager from where I was working was like, "Hey, I'm going to reach out to this guy because you're awesome." And I ended up getting a better. So, I mean, it really worked out. It was led for me to do these things. And then, I ended up marrying Alyssa, and then we had our son, and we eventually moved out here to Colorado, where I was able to start Kingdom Fit. The Fit stands for Faith and Training, which is my own gym, and starting to work on my own ministry, where I get to go speak at churches and just share my story and become an impactful in the community here in Colorado Springs, because Colorado Springs has a big um, uh, suicide rate amongst young men. And because I struggled with suicide my whole life, that me jumping out of the window was just the straw that broke the camel's back. But I struggled with those thoughts most of my life. And because of the drug and alcohol addiction, there's a lot of that going on here in the Springs as well, just like it's going on in a lot of places. And so now I'm pursuing working in suicide prevention, working with the youth, connecting with powerful individuals here that lead those type of events and ministries. And so we've only been here for about a year and a half. We had our daughter Gianna here, which was absolutely amazing. So we have one kid from California and one from Colorado Springs. But God's doing some work here in my family and in my ministry and in Colorado Springs. And, I was sharing with you earlier, I have a 20-year-old son who, for years I wasn't really a part of his life. The drugs, the alcohol, my own garbage, inability to really connect and make that happen. And, just trying to rebuild that relationship as well. Like, God is in the restoring business. And so here I am, trying to restore my relationship with Christopher so that he can see me as a father figure and someone that truly loves him. And it's hard because he grew up so long without me. And like myself, we were hardwired and programmed with our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts, to respond in certain ways. And I see a lot of myself in him, and to try to repair that, or to get more involved and just, man, I love you so much. But with Caleb, it's just like, well, I get to start with scratch with that little guy, and so I honestly, I just want to be a leader. I want to be a great father. I want to be a mentor. I want to do powerful things for the kingdom of God and just share what he's done with me, because even though I've had father figures in my life, nothing's been greater than God the Father in my life, because he was the only one that could show me grace and forgiveness and give me healing and redemption and give me hope like nothing else did. People didn't, and they usually don't. But it's really walking in the kingdom and God's ways that that gives me life, and I want to give that life to other people, because it really has restored me on a whole nother level. I was sharing with you that I was told I was never going to walk again. In the event that I could, I would never play sports. I would never work out ever again, and I would always be medicated to get by in life. And I play sports on a very competitive level. Tournament team softball, and usually one of the oldest guys on the team. I lift weights daily. I have a gym in my home. I lift weights, and I don't take any kind of medication. Even when my back is a little tender, it's like I'm not popping ibuprofen and all that stuff. I found other ways to really deal with those things. And so, my heart and my mission and all of this is to continue to make an impact and difference in others' lives, and to continue to love and pour out the love that God gives me onto other people.
Amazing. I'm blown away too. You haven't gone into a lot of detail, but with your actual spine surgery, but the
Yeah.
amount of hardware in your spine and the fact that, I mean, I had no idea you were actually handcuffed to the bed in the middle of all this. Like, I don't think it gets much lower than where you were. I'm blown away. I'm encouraged by that as someone who may eventually have surgery selfishly. But to see what God has done in your life, and, you've basically, this is a generational curse possibly broken for.
Yes.
And
well, yeah,
there's hope. I would love
yes.
for you, coming from what you've come from, and you've said a lot here, but I would love for you to look into the camera, and there's someone out there that is maybe, hopefully they're not quite as low, handcuffed to a bed and told they're never walking, homeless, and oh my goodness, all of the things. But like, if you could reach out to that person right now, if you could say something to them, and remembering what it was like to be in that pit, what would you say?
You're not alone, and you are loved. Depression, which is what I had most of my life, and I was able to consume it with alcohol. I could, I understand a lot of these comedians where they struggle deeply, and they're funny for the world because they're deflecting the pain in their life. I became very outgoing and charming and funny to deflect all the pain that was going on in my life. A lot of people around me wanted to be like me, but I didn't want to even be me. I was killing myself slowly through the drugs and alcohol. I mean, the suicide attempt was one thing, but I was drowning myself, and I wanted to die. There was no purpose. There was no hope for my life. And the reality is that there's a purpose and a hope for all of our lives. We serve a mighty God that truly does love us. And even in the midst of trial and tribulation and struggle and chaos, it's not a personal attack as much as it is a growth opportunity. I know that being in the gym, adding weight and pushing yourself a little bit harder, it all hurts and it doesn't feel good. And every workout seems the same. But if you really go back from, you're on day 100 and you reflect on day one, the amount that you're doing now and the things that you can tolerate and the strength that you developed, you know, a quick story is that, like, I had a friend who in the midst of my brokenness encouraged me to run a 10K when I couldn't even move, and I did. He encouraged me to start at the bottom of a mountain. We really went to a mountain, and he looked at me in my disbelief, and he said, "Don't worry about the top of that mountain. Just take one step at a time, and I am with you." And I took one step and the next step, and we got into an amazing conversation. And then all of a sudden he looks at me and he says, "Now look down. Look at how far you've come." And I was just baffled. But, you know, and because I'm a fitness guy, like, fitness is a metaphor for life, even my spiritual life. You know, there's times you have to dig deeper spiritually. Um, you know, address the things that have harmed you. You know, ripping the Band-Aid hurts. It really does. Ripping that Band-Aid off hurts, but healing needs to take place. Forgiveness is huge. You know, to be able to forgive other people not only heals you, but it heals them, and it leads by example. You know, and if you can forgive, no matter. I had this conversation with my dad before he died. You know, my dad died of a drug overdose last year, and you know, he called me up one day and he says, "You know, son, I don't know why you even love me. I did everything in my power to tear you down. I never wanted you to be better than me." And that was his junk and his insecurities. And I don't take that personal, and I love him and I've forgiven him and I'm healed from all that stuff. But to be able to address those things and to show forgiveness, well, you know, you're teaching somebody about love and forgiveness. And so, um, you know, allow your heart to be changed. Don't give up. Surround yourself around people that truly care. Just know who's, you know, it's easy to discern who's not really trying to help you and who's hurting you in all this. It really is. Sometimes we're afraid to move away from those people. Sometimes we're so conditioned to be around that chaos. Just recognize that's not what's supposed to take place in your life, you know. And it's hard getting out of that ditch sometimes, but it's so worth it. And then finally, when you get to a place where, man, I'm cruising, go out and help other people deal with the exact same things that you've been dealt and the things that you've been dealing with, because there's nothing more gratifying than giving it to someone else when they're at the bottom, you know. And so um, I encourage you to do those things, and I just hope that my words, even if you take one or two of them, really press your heart to really find hope and to put a smile on your face and just know that you're not alone and that you are loved.
Oh, amazing, amazing. I love this story of redemption. And I love how it kind of comes full circle, because the first person that poured into you, and as far as Jesus, was at the gym. And now
Yeah.
you get to be that person for the next person and share your
All right.
amazing testimony. So thank you so much for sharing
You,
such a personal testimony today.
what doesn't belong to me, it belongs to him. So
Yes, it
you're
does.
very welcome. You're very, very welcome.
Thanks. I know a lot of people will be touched by this. I know I was. So thank you for listening today. And remember, whatever your situation is, there's always hope and
Yes.
redemption. We have an amazing Redeemer who loves you more than you could ever imagine. So thank you for listening. If you would like to reach out to me at everydaymiraclespodcast.com is how to apply, or everydaymiraclespodcast@gmail.com. I'm also going to post a website for Rob Decker if you would like to get a little more information. He has a lot of pieces to his story. It's robdeckerspeaks.com, and I will be posting that in the info below. So thanks so much. God
Thank you.
bless.